Spatchcock Nation is in the house. Unfiltered, uncensored, and unapologetically for the people. Turn it up. Yo, after the party, it's the after party. And while we don't respect R. Kelly and how he operated, that is a pretty cool song. So we're going to remix this thing too. We are partying up after a poker night, the executive game, and I'm going to bring on my man, my partner in crime, and someone you always want to bet on, the great Alexander DeRosa.
What's going on, dude?
What's up, man? How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited for the poker conversation. You know, like I don't play a lot of poker, but I do like gambling on myself.
Well, I got to say, you have bet on yourself because I also like, too, that you have your camera worked out just right so we can see the Emmy that you won up in the corner over your right shoulder.
It's just, just happened to be there. It was just the only place that thing could go.
Yeah, I get it. Well, that's why the Stanley Cup is over here that I stole from you. That's just there in the background just because. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's cool. It's actually a piggy bank, so I'm glad it's on your shelf and not mine. I thought it was a lot cooler when I bought it.
Piggy banks are cool. I like pigs and I like banks. Actually, I don't know if I love banks. I don't like taxes. I try not to pay them. JKRS. I pay all my taxes. So speaking about paying stuff, dude, people were playing some cards. We had that great time at that party, and it was one of my favorite party scenes out of this series of the show we shot. But you know, we took a risk on getting this series off the ground and this podcast too, for that matter. How you feeling about that, man? How you feeling about the chips we put on the table and where we're at?
Yeah, I mean, I think a risk, but also just like we're putting ourselves out there and interesting. You know, once you go on the internet with any types of videos, like everything's out there, and it's just an interesting thing that like you know, people are enjoying it. The jokes we make, we can be a little bit edgier, and people are receptive to it. And that's because the other option is just doing what everybody else does. And I don't like that option. So I think it's a good risk so far. At least. I might change my opinion after this episode airs, you know?
Yeah. Or, you know, if after the series is canceled after tonight's episode airs too, because one drops tonight. So speaking of taking risks and TV episodes, I'm going to introduce our guest star today. And this person has definitely bet on themselves and done some amazing shit. And Derrell Smith. And there's a bunch of stuff to shout out Derell about. First of all, both Alex and I were born in the city of Syracuse. I went to the Whitman School of Management. Alex won that Emmy while he was working at Syracuse University. So the Orange are near and dear to our hearts. And Derell Smith was one of the best college football players to come through the Cuse in a long time. Really great team guy. But this dude also, right? He's had a TV show on Tastemade, Meatballs, an amazing cooking brand, dude. You got to make sure you check out 99eats.co. You're going to learn about his grandmother tonight. You're going to learn about all this crazy stuff in the best of ways. Like this guy has worked in advertising. Alex and I both worked at agencies. Like I worked at Ogilvy. Alex worked at Pygmy Hugo. Derell's worked at, I believe RGA is where he worked, which is also a baller agency. And this dude is just a baller in general. When you see some of the stuff on Tastemade, some of the stuff he's interacted with children on TV, cooking with other people, slinging meatballs and winning meatball contests in Brooklyn, New York, which some people wrongly will assume that that's where the meatball was invented. It's not, but my wife, her pet name for me is her little meatball. So that's also important to me too. So without any further ado, let's bring in the great Derell Smith.
Yo.
What's up, man?
Thank you for that warm welcome.
Yeah, dude. I mean, your reputation both as a cook and a player and all these things is huge, but also as a person, man. Like people talk about how you treat others and make people feel. And to me, that's what food is all about. And I think that's how you got started in it. You know what I mean? Like making people feel good with it.
That's the truth. Absolutely.
How important that is with what you do on your show is storytelling and making people feel part of the story.
I think it's all about making people feel connected to the whole experience, because when it comes to TV, that's valuable time that somebody's going to sit, watch you. And so as an entertainer, I feel as though I have the responsibility to make it worth your time if you're going to sit there and watch me for that amount of time. And then just because of the content of the show, I feel as though I should give you a good recipe that you now have in your arsenal after you watch it, so you can feel a little smarter and do something good for the people in your kitchen.
I love the way you put that. They're dedicating 30 minutes or whatever it is to watching you, and knowing that. So every ounce that you put into these shows is because like people are about to spend that valuable time on you, which is awesome. It's an
Hmm.
awesome way of looking at it.
For sure. I mean, everything's transactional. Like it ain't got to be money all the time, but
Mhm.
value can come in so many different forms. And so I think that um, going back to football, I was a captain. As a captain, I really didn't talk much. Like I talked when I needed to, and when I talk, people listen. And I've always been around captains in my life just like that. And so when I approach any type of professionalism, whether I'm in the kitchen, whether I'm on TV, I bring that same energy to it. Where if I'm going to say something, like I want you to listen to it. And since I'm on TV, we're gonna do all of it. We're gonna entertain you. We're gonna say some real things that affect me and are part of my story. And then I'm gonna teach you something at the end. So yeah, to start off with relating it to football immediately, it's that same energy that I put into my food and that I put into my craft in general.
So in this show, we're talking about like when we get into your story and everything, we're going to talk about how you bet on yourself. But
Hmm.
with your experience in the NFL and in college football, the shift in life recently has gotten into like sports gambling, and which I don't gamble a ton. I might put a ham sandwich on something every once in a while, like if it's a special occasion and we're hanging out. But it's not, and I'm not opposed to that either. But I think about professional athletes, people that have had literally have skin in the game. What's your take on the this thing exploding, right? How do you feel about that for pro sports and football in general?
I think with sports gambling, it's twofold. As a fan, my fear would be that it would take away from the essence of the game and just watching it to root for a team or to root for this competitiveness, and then to make it a singular experience where you're kind of betting on this one person to do XYZ versus on the team to achieve this win or whatever. And so from that piece, it kind of separates like athletics to me. It separates the competition piece and almost makes it a commodity now, where it's like we have this business side of it, which is a personal. I'm betting on XYZ so I can make some money off of it, and then I have this fandom piece where like I legitimately want this person to win, and so it just muddy the waters for me. However, at the same time, like I don't know, like I'm all about if you're gonna make your money, go ahead and make your money, and if you're gonna do it, find a legal way to do it. And so it's twofold, like giving people the opportunity to indulge in this thing that's been around forever in gambling, but just making sure there's some type of responsibility piece in there where we still maintain the essence of what sports is.
Yeah.
It's like that's a, I'm like leveling the question. Basically, I didn't pick a side, but that's what it is. Like I think it's two sides to it. Like it's better in it, but it's also gonna dull it a little bit as well.
Yeah, and I think also too, there's like, I mean, it's still a super new thing, so it's hard to figure out exactly how we should feel about it. But
Yeah.
you said something interesting that I wanted to get your opinion on too. And actually, I thought about this a while ago. And I know when we were emailing back and forth, we mentioned that we had the pleasure of meeting Coach Fran Brown, the new head coach at Syracuse University, who you're going to like. And he talked about the importance of NIL. So I was thinking about players like you. So you were like a captain for multiple years. There's a great player here. And if the NIL existed when you were playing, you would have been paid pretty handsomely. You were an NFL draft prospect, well regarded. You were all Big East a couple years in a row. What's your thoughts on NIL in general? Like, do you wish it was there when you were there? Like, what do you think about that whole thing in life, you know?
Uh, I wouldn't say I don't. Of course, it would have been nice to make some money, but I don't regret it not being there when I was there because we kind of helped our play and our contribution to the game help elevate it to this level. And so I appreciate the part that I did, that I had, and like everybody I played with and before us who had a hand in getting it to this point. Now, when it comes to NIL deal, I think that right now it's the wild, wild west. Like I think that it was irresponsible how it was kind of just unleashed and created this kind of chaos in uh college sports. But at the same time, everybody's benefiting from it. So Fran Brown, just like you mentioned, is benefiting from it, and all of these portal players that we getting out of the SEC and Big Ten, like we're benefiting from it. So obviously there is some good that's coming out of it, but I think it just could have been handled a little differently. And I wouldn't be surprised that in the near future, if they come up with some other type of solution where players can get paid, but then it could also just be a responsibility and a accountability added to the portal in the NIL. Like it's too wild right now to understand the effects that it's going to have. But in the interim, it's kind of cool to see how teams could go from 0-10 to an undefeated season potentially in 1 year. Like that's kind of cool. And another piece to it, and I'll talk about this with friends of mine, is if you go to Europe, the way that soccer is embedded into the culture is like it's nothing like I've seen anywhere else. Like soccer just has this ability to be embedded in the culture. And I think that in the US, our version of soccer's legacy and soccer's depth is college athletics. And so like your affinity for your school, in my opinion, is kind of deeper than your affinity to a like a professional team, just because you don't have any experience of playing on the. I'm an Eagles fan, or if you're a Bills fan, right? Like you've never played on the Bills. Your affinity to this institution is simply because you're a fan. Your mom might have been a fan, or your father or grandfather might have been a fan, and it's a legacy thing where everybody becomes a fan. When it comes to school, you have a very intimate relationship with that school. And it's just like that type of relationship that I've seen with soccer in Europe. And I think that once we can get college sports, once we can get the business part of it, and the schools can get back to focusing on whatever that magic is of college sports, where you create this relationship with your fans, I think that it might even be bigger than professional sports. Think about NCAA women right now, or the March Madness. Like those things, in my opinion, have the ability to be bigger than something like professional sports in the long run if they do it right.
You know, when you're saying that, I completely agree. But it also comes down to like, how are the media and the fans betting on that, right? Like the women's NCAA tournament right now, that's a great thing. People are emotionally invested in that. And they're like, to your point earlier about trading that time in. And I think that's important. And I actually wanted to ask you, before we get into your entire journey, starting with your grandmother to working in advertising, all this other stuff, I had a question too about betting on yourself, sports related. So your career as a linebacker here is super well documented. Then you're playing in the Texans. And then also you're willing to move to play fullback, which is an entirely different position than linebacker. Like, tell us about, as an athlete and as a professional athlete, about the risks and betting on yourself and trying to decide, like signing as a free agent with a team or being willing to move positions. Walk us through that willingness to like bet on yourself in a professional athletic level.
I should have never switched positions because I hurt my neck at the end of my career at fullback. But no, I'm playing. When it comes to athletics, the mind of the athlete is different, in my opinion. Like I've grown up around athletes my entire life, and there's some type of nature within us where we think that we could do anything. And I'm sure other people have it, but I think that in athletes, specifically football players, just like we have a certain type of confidence that you must have in order to play this type of game. And so I would say that I had the opportunities to do those things, but the players that I had around me and like the players I grew up with, all of us share that same nature of saying that we could do anything that anybody else could do. And so when it comes to betting on myself, I always have that confidence, and that's just my nature. Like to be confident. And I remember when I worked at advertising, before I was let go from my job, I remember my boss called me overly confident. And I was like, what does that even mean? Like, I've never heard of that concept. Just because, like I said, like what I've grown up around and like what I was nurtured in is just a sea of confidence. And so when it comes to any type of sudden change moments, that's what you call it in sports. When it comes to sudden change and you have to adapt to whatever environment that you're placed in or whatever circumstance, I'm 100% confident that I'll come out on the other side just because, one, the mind of an athlete, but then two, the practice of an athlete is persistence. Like no matter what, if you're down in the game, if you're down and out in the huddle, whatever it is, the locker room is in disarray, like you always just persist through it until you get back to your position and you're able to capitalize on it. So betting on myself is that same nature. It's just my nature to do that.
That story of the ad agency is wild because in that world, when you're pitching clients, you need to show confidence in what you're pitching. You can't be like, oh, this might work. The
Yeah.
confidence, how there's difference between cocky and confidence, but like you go in overconfident and people trust you. Like this guy knows what he's talking about. And so to say that you're overconfident, it's like that's
Yeah.
what you want in that industry, especially people that are client facing.
I lost a pitch once, dude. I was pitching something, and afterwards, I was just got into pitching, and afterwards, when we lost the pitch, the client, we talked to her a while later, and I'm like, so why'd we lose that? And she goes, you didn't seem confident, like you believed in the idea, and if you didn't believe in it, why would we believe in it? And I was just like heartbroken, but she was right.
Yeah, that's the truth. Because at the end of the day, like when it comes to a job and when you're in that professional atmosphere and you have a boss, like that boss sometimes can be a coach. And when you switch coaches, for instance, I had one coach for the first 3 years of my college career, and then the second half of my career, we had Doug Marrone. And just like that shift, that talent that you have could be nurtured by a boss or by a coach. But if it's the wrong coach and they don't know how to communicate with you and your confidence or whatever your skill set comes off as offensive to them, then they have the ability to kind of to halter your career and like put you on ice. Whereas that same talent or that same person could have somebody else in come in and nurture it and become the best producer or account manager to ever live or creative. I mean, so it's two pieces to it. And that's the relation to like just professionalism and being in that environment in football. Like when you got a boss, if your boss not nurturing your talent and they don't know what you bring to the table and don't know how to use you, that's just as bad as you not preaching confidence to yourself. I mean, so
Yeah,
I don't know. I wouldn't change
it's
much.
making you doubt your ability, especially, I mean, sports is wild. And I've played just sports growing up, nothing ever at that level, but like watching a kicker at the end of like the Bills kicker miss this field goal and lose this game. Like, how do you come back from that? I mean, he has a whole offseason to come back from, but how do you come back from that? Like, it's just even game to game, like
It's
the
tough,
mental, like,
man.
and your coach is on you too. If your coach is on top of you and like doubting you, then you're going to miss every kick.
That's the
That's
truth.
crazy,
That's the truth, man.
man.
So, one thing that you haven't missed is taking opportunities as they come. So I want to shift gears a little bit into just getting into the background about you. So, and your journey from cooking with your grandmother all the way to cooking TV shows, working at ad agency. So we want to hear everything, but I have a similar background in cooking with my grandmother growing up. My mom too. My grandmother, she said this like her crooked finger would say, now look it, and always tell me how to cook this or how to cook that. But to me, I was brought up in an environment where cooking for others was a way of showing love, right? And creating an atmosphere where y'all could trade stories and hang out. So tell us the story, bro, about you cooking with your grandmother to how you got to where you are now. And then we're going to start firing more questions because you're just super freaking interesting. You know what I mean?
I appreciate that. Well, I grew up just cooking with the women in my family. My grandmother, my mother for sure is probably the biggest influence in my food. Because she worked at nights and she'll come home after work, cook in the morning, go to sleep, heat the food up at night, go to work, and we had foodies. So just like seeing how she was able to be an octopus, like I don't know how she did it, like cook for 6 people and then still maintain her life was wild. And so just being around the women in my family and seeing how they were able to do it fast, do it good, and do it well. Like it was just something about it, right? And that kind of sparked that curiosity. And once I started to do food myself, I realized it was just a way of self-expression. Like my mom was able to cook that way, and my grandmothers and the women in my family were able to cook that way and fast and do all of these things because they figured out the secret of expressing themselves through their product. And it could be fast, it could take a long time, but whatever it was, whenever you taste it, you just felt that love in the food. And so I think that was the biggest thing that I was able to take from the women who I cooked with in my family, just that ability to express myself through my product. Fast forward with meatballs, like it was just something where I came home after class one day and I had all of the things in the fridge to make it. And I made meatballs, and I remember just calling my friend, like, man, we got a winner, man, come through. And he tried it, and I told him, man, I'm gonna sell these one day. And I did it. And I same thing, like I'm just a man of my word. Like if I tell you I'm gonna do something, when I first tasted them, I knew that they were good enough that I would be able to sell them one day. And so when the opportunity presented itself, I was let go from my job in advertising 2017. I'd already won the meatball competition. I'd proven that I had a product that was worth putting out there and getting not even critique, just putting out there so I could share myself with the people. And I took advantage of it and hopped on it and just never looked back.
With this meatball recipe though, like was it your grandma's or your mom's, or is it just literally you just kind of made it up that on the fly?
Just made it up. I mean, literally, it's really the sauce. So the
Yep.
sauce we call the OG sauce, and that OG is like, man, you could put that on anything and then it tastes good. And so that sauce was the thing that really hasn't changed from day one. The meatball that I first made wasn't that impressive. Like the meatball was good, but the sauce was the thing that everything just made it like taste good with it. But same way it comes to sports and you become obsessed with it, I kind of felt that way with the meatball just because the sauce was in place. That's good.
Yep.
Sauce was good.
Yep.
But
Yep.
that meatball was the thing that over the years, I just kept playing around with the recipe, like trying new things and just became obsessed with it to the point where I just got so good at it. And that's when I was like, oh, these are competition worthy. And I entered into the competition and I knew I would win. Like I just because I knew it was that good. Like I
It's
wouldn't
that
enter the
confidence.
competition.
It's the confidence.
Yeah, like I wouldn't go into a situation where I didn't practice. Like I practiced this recipe from 2012 up to 2016 when I won that meatball competition. So 4 years of nonstop obsession on this one specific thing, just a tiny ball of meat, man. I did it in one. I knew I would.
What was your grandma's specialty?
My grandma, she would just make anything. Like my grandma would go in the kitchen, she would make. I remember her potato salad. I remember her chicken. I remember, like her home. Her home was just a place where people came and ate. And that feeling of grandma's house is kind of that's the thing that my grandma infused in me. That feeling of community and food is something that heals. My mom is the cook. My
Yeah.
mom taught me the recipes, and she bought the ingredients that I would mess up sometimes because I live with her. And so being around my mom and just taking that curiosity to another level in the sense that I was with her in the kitchen sometimes when she was making food, or when she was tired, sometimes she'd be like, hey, Derell, you make this one thing and I'll make the other things, but make this one thing for tonight so y'all can eat it. And so she was kind of the one who nurtured my food sense. And when you combine those two things together, it's like Voltron, and it creates like the logo of the business now. that's all of the moms and grandmas and everybody just put into one. And I
Yep.
would say like that's the secret. That's the caricature that's within my soul that I kind of manifest into the world. Like that spirit of grandma is the thing that you taste in my food.
I
So
love that logo.
yeah, me
Thank you,
too.
man. I
I
appreciate it.
want a
Thank you.
T-shirt with that logo on it, and we'll wear it on our show for sure. You,
Bet.
you touched on something, man, like that. Like I'm getting super pumped about this. I don't want to get too excited. So, but I want to ask you about something, and I know that this is important to Alex. But like, so one, respect to your mom and your grandma, particularly on your website, and everybody that's listening, go and check out the website because the About Grandma page, dude, it gives me goosebumps, bro. It gets teary eyed. Like this dude was raised with some great people. But I want
Yeah.
to pivot into you made the Voltron reference, dude, and the 99 Eats based on the Michael Jordan not giving his likeness to
Yep.
the games, dude. Like your finger for nostalgia, your finger on the pulse of nostalgia and pop culture. Like you've just got the cool factor, bro. So tell us how you incorporate that, because, dude, you're talking about like the quality of your meatballs, and you're making this OG sauce. You're putting kind of a hip hop cool spin on a classic Italian back of the room place, which also is a cool style too. But tell us about how you created this cool ass vibe, bro.
I mean, that's a version of self-expression. And so I think that the product, the merch, the everything is me manifested through a product. And I don't know, man. Like I'm just myself. Like I don't try to be anybody else. I just try to be myself to the best of my ability. I'm always just seeking peace. So like I said, I just came from the beach doing work. After this interview, I'll probably go back to that same spot and continue to do some work. And I just try to mind my business and help people out where I can. And I got that from the people in my family. And so that's why I'm cool. Now the other part of it, like the way I'm able to express that is just through experiences. Like I'm always down to try new things. I'm always down to experience new products or go into places that usually I wouldn't go just because of my curiosity. And because of that, I soak in so many different things. Like with cultures, I feel as though the food culture of Italians and the food culture of African Americans, it's a similarity in it because the food it has the same purpose. Like pasta is cheap to make and it feeds a bunch of people. And
Yeah.
it's put in big bowls and you pass it around the table. Sunday gravy is something that takes a long time, and Italians sit around the table, they come together, they talk to each other, and this is their opportunity to catch up on the week. And I feel as though like Black Americans, at least in my experience, like we grew up with that same type of culture. Like our cookout is the same exact thing. Like we get together and we make cheap food that feed a lot of people. On Sundays when you cook and you making macaroni and cheese, it's cheese and pasta, or you making rice, you making cornbread, like all of those things, fried chicken, like all of these things serve a similar purpose. And I think that my vibe, like in taking those two things and kind of molding them together, like this idea of Italian soul food is kind of what I'm able to create in the meatballs, in the sauce, when we do chicken cutlets, and just the whole aesthetic of it. Like I think there's a similarity, and I was able to capitalize on that because of my appreciation for Italian food and my understanding of uh, the nuances and the threads between Black and Italian culture.
I love that description of food. Is like obviously the food that you're describing, the mac and cheese and stuff, is probably super good, but the idea of its purpose is to bring people together. And if you don't have enough of it, if you go too fancy and too expensive on this food, you don't have as many people, and it's about bringing people together.
Exactly, ain't gonna go broke. Like we ain't nobody got money to spend a bunch of money on groceries when you feeding that many people all the time. So the intention of the food is also there.
Talk about that intention, because Alex, I love that you brought that point up. And Derell, when you were explaining it earlier, like you're making the line you use, which we're going to use in the future on our show, and we'll quote you on it. But you said making cheap food good, and the cookout stuff, right? Like we make a pretty baller fried chicken. No doubt you do too. Mac and cheese, and you mentioned beans too. So the thing is, you're right, cheap ingredients, but to your point earlier, that obsession to make it really good. Because to me, honestly, one of the base levels for me, if someone tells me they can cook or they want to cook, I tell them one thing that you have to be able to master in my mind is be able to make a good fried chicken, and repeat it, right? Because you can get one right and it feels good, but and I've got a process that I use might be different than yours. But when you go to a cookout and someone's got it there, the way they've done something different is important with that cheap food good thing. So when you're talking about that expression, man, like what are some ways that you think about food, that cheap food or whatever? Like what are some of your go-to things you're having a cookout, you want to express yourself and express your love? What's your like go-to? The meatballs, obviously. So besides the meatballs, what's your go-to show love food?
Potato salad and chicken thighs. Chicken thighs because I think they're the most flavorful part of the chicken and they're cheap. So the thighs, I marinate them in some buttermilk, sriracha, salt, pepper, and I just let those sit to the side overnight. And then with potato salad, my recipe don't change. Like that's something that you don't really play with. And so I would say those two things, both are cheap to make, both feed a big crowd, and when they're good, man, you become a celebrity within the community of eaters just because if you make a good potato salad, there's nothing like that, and people trust you with everything that they decide to make. Because same thing, like when it comes to making cheap foods good, that's where the soul comes in, and that soul is the piece that's translated through the dish, and that's what allows you to massage a steak that might not be the best cut of steak, but the way you cook it or the way you cut it or season it or take it off right at that right spot so that it can rest and become nice and juicy inside versus underdone. Like that's the piece that you really can't write down in the recipe book. And that's the piece that can't be translated except through experience. Like the only way to learn how to do those type of things is through experience. And when you dealing with cheap food, like you gotta show it love because that's like that's all you got. Like it ain't the best cut of meat. You ain't just gotta sear it. It ain't a Wagyu steak where you can overcook it as long as you want and it's still gonna be delicious. Like this is something where if you don't make it the right way, it's gonna come out tough. And so that's the part where I think I specialize in, and that's the piece where I'm able to effectively express myself through my food consistently.
That's the passion part of it. We make a lot of recipes, and part of what we try to do is make them easy, and we make them unique, and we try to make them our own. But we try to make them repeatable by people that watch our show. But you're right, like you cook that steak or something for an extra 10 minutes because you're just like, oh, it's a steak. I'll just throw it on and cook it. If there's no love or passion within it, it's going to come out, based on what you put into it.
And when it comes to steak, it's 10 seconds. Like you cook it an extra 10 seconds, and it's like, damn, we almost had a medium, and now what's this?
We were shooting in a apartment building, and we bounced around in different areas, and it was an electric stove. We were doing a cast iron steak on, and we kept tripping. We didn't know why. I think we were using too many things, but we kept tripping the power, and so our steak just kept stopping cooking, and we had to keep going, flipping the power and starting on it. And luckily, with movie magic and editing, it looked good to the viewers, and they don't have that problem at home. So
that's the truth.
Can you go ahead, Matt?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, can you explain, just because I think I want to hear it from you because I've read it, but the 99 Eats, like the Michael Jordan, like explain how you came up with that exactly, because it's so cool.
Well, when I first started the company, it was called 99 Meatballs because I had the meatballs and that was the only thing I really served. And this whole idea of 99, and the LLC is 99 Eats, right? So like 99 Meatballs was supposed to be this meatball portion of it. 99 Eats, the parent company. And when it comes to 99 Eats, I always wanted to just have a pop-up. Like I didn't necessarily want a restaurant. I didn't want a brick and mortar, especially in the beginning because I didn't know what I was doing. And so I positioned it as a pop-up, and it would be the best food that you can't have. And that idea, I remember playing NBA Live. I think it was NBA Live, like 90 something, 99 or 96, one of them. And on the Chicago Bulls, Michael Jordan owned his likeness, but he was the best player in the game, but you couldn't play with him. And so just that idea of control and being the best and controlling like your destiny, I remember thinking like, damn, I want to have the best food that you can't have unless I make it real. Just like a folder on a computer. Like 99 Eats was just this virtual brand where if I open that folder, it exists in the world. But as soon as I double click and close it or exit out of it, poof, it's magic, it's gone. And it's the best thing that you can't have. And so I just I thought it was a cool name, one, but then two, the story behind it was like I knew my food was the best. And because of that, I'm only gonna make it when I feel the best. Like if
You're
I'm not
creating
feeling the
demand.
best, I
Yeah.
created the demand, and I had the confidence to take it away when I want to take it away, and then let you have it when you want it. And I had that control, just like Jordan.
I wish there was more of that food style because I mean there's not as much in Syracuse. I'm sure there's a lot in bigger cities, but like the idea of you have it at your fingertips, like there's some great restaurants around here that you can get anytime, but they just get old after a while because you can have them
Yeah,
anytime. I love
yeah.
the movie Chef where he delivers the Cuban sandwiches and his food truck and just creating that. That's one of the things, we started with wanting this food truck and we realized we both have full-time jobs. Like there's no way we can run an actual food truck. Um, so we started this cooking show. But we always have this dream of creating these pop-up shoots where we're shooting in a kind of this mobile kitchen and just like dropping the bomb on like, hey, we're in this street today and we're going to sell till we're gone and we're going to shoot a live show and things like that because that is exciting. And it just, I mean, in a city like Syracuse where, there's more stuff going on, but there's not as much as these big cities, having that
Mhm.
energy level and that excitement just pop up. It's what's needed, in all cities, honestly.
I agree with that. The community piece to it is something that can be is big. I mean, especially in a city like Syracuse. Syracuse is like I lived in Syracuse for a while when I was in grad school as a resident versus as a student. And I just have an appreciation for it. Like upstate New York in general is so historic, it's old, it's preserved. In order to live there, like you have to be a community. When you're driving in the snow and like the person next to you is relying on you to brake at the right time. Like it's a different experience when you live in a city like Syracuse because everybody's in it together. And so I agree with you, man. Like I would love to, when it's all said and done, be able to have some type of presence in Syracuse. So yeah,
That's
man,
that.
I'm with it.
I've never heard anybody put Syracuse like that because Matt mentioned I spent a lot of time marketing Syracuse University, and one of the big things, as you know, is snow, and everyone, it's just they don't know what to expect.
Hmm.
And the question's always like, well, why did you come here? And there's this like, and it's funny. Some people are like, well, we're inside a lot, so there's a stronger community because you're just with each other more. But the way
That
you put it is like even the braking, like you are relying on people to not crashing into you in the
yeah,
winter. There's a little bit grittierness to the community.
it's definitely a gritty place. And like I grew up in Philly. Philly, I would say growing up in Philly, and then I went to eighth grade through 12th grade. I moved to Delaware, and we lived in Delaware. And I would say Philly and Delaware remind me of Syracuse. Like if they were all a thing, like Syracuse would have that same feeling of like the grittiness of a Philly, but then the community aspect of like a place like Delaware, where even though it's like country and you spread out, like everybody is small. Like everybody kind of knows each other and you have that community feel that you win it together and the kindness of it. Um, so like going to Syracuse was just like an extension of my existence. Like I was like, oh, I'm going to a place that reminds me of home, whatever home is. Like these two versions of it, it reminds me of what home is. And I got there, and it was exactly that.
What you obviously saw snow before, but what was the snowfall like here for you the first time? Like it snows a little bit different here than other places.
Yeah, that's different, man. Syracuse snow is a little different, but I would say it's like a snow globe. Like it's like you live in a snow globe
Yeah.
for about 4 or 5 months throughout the year. But there's something beautiful about it. There's something nostalgic and like little elves. Like you just feel like a little elf, like walking through campus with your big stuff on. And but then like going to parties in the skimpiest of outfits, like basketball shorts sometimes in the snowstorm. And so like you learn how to manage it. Like it's something where before you get there, you kind of say like, man, I don't know what to expect. And then once you're in it, you you become a part of it. And the snow is just a part of the experience that you continue about your life. Like it's not really something that alters it. I mean, it alters it, but it's not something that shuts down your life where you say, oh, it's snowing and I can't go outside. Whereas like LA, if it rains outside, nobody's on the street. Like it's the wildest thing that you'll ever see. Whereas in Syracuse, like the snow is a part of it. And people like it don't scare them. They're just like, oh, we just gotta be prepared. Like it ain't no big deal. Like it's snow. And
It,
I learned to appreciate it when I got there.
it's almost like, oh, let's throw a big party because it's snowing out and I'll get like versus like hiding in your houses. Yeah, it almost enhances
Yeah,
everything. Yeah.
exactly. Like this is us. Like this is our thing. So I appreciate it.
So, Derell, one of the things that I really appreciate about you is, I mean, we cook on TV too, so you're sharing these recipes and stuff, but you're really great at creating the sense of community, and it's obviously real because you believe it. But I go through and look at stuff where like you're on like the Disney Eats thing, or like the way that you did stuff with the New York Post, like it comes out as like this dude genuinely cares about other people. So, how do you stay genuine to that, and what do you think about community building, man? Like why are you so good at it? What's your viewpoint on it?
I protect myself. Like I protect my whatever my magic is, I protect it. Like I don't really you don't see me in places where I don't frequently go or I don't belong. Like I don't really chase any type of validation from anybody just because I know I'm very confident in who I am and I know what I bring to the table. And because of that, I only seek out things that I authentically am drawn to and attracted to. And when you do that, you tend to put your ass into it. Like I put my full self into the things that I decide to do because I'm intentional about what I do. And so that authenticity is real because I love what I do and I love the things that I'm able to do because I'm intentional about it. And that's it.
How did you when you transitioned, obviously like with even cooking with children, like there's so many different avenues you've done. What was the hardest part? You go from, ad agency world where obviously there's a little bit of that kind of, especially client facing, you're pitching and you're kind of vibrant in that. But what was the biggest challenge for you transitioning into this kind of food on camera personality? You said as a captain in Syracuse, you didn't talk a lot. This is all you talking. What was that
Yeah.
hard transition like?
Well, it's really finding your voice and finding the things that you want to talk about. So it's a million food shows out there,
Hmm.
but I think the thing that's unique about when I'm on camera or like the stories that I tell or my presence on camera is not really fake. Like I'm not on there to be fake at all. I'm not on there to be exactly like other chefs that I've seen or emulate what they do in the kitchen. I really go in there to be myself and um to teach you things and to be vulnerable for 30 minutes. And I think that what that came from was practice. Like I was the resident chef at Bed Bath Beyond. So after football, I'll tell you a little bit about my story. After football, went back to Syracuse, finished up my master's, went to Boulder, Colorado, was an intern there for a few months, and after that moved back to New York City, and I worked at 360i, who's the CEO at the time was actually a Syracuse grad, Brian Weiner, the man, and then went to RGA. RGA was like the future. It is the future, probably still to this day. But it was a really cool environment to be in, and you were just around the smartest people that you'll ever meet in your entire life. Um, and so while I was there, I got a different side of advertising, a different understanding of professionalism, and I'd actually won the meatball competition before going to RGA, but I didn't start the company until I was at RGA. And so I started the company and would like call off from work or work from home to serve meatballs around the community, like do all of these things until I was let go. When I was let go, I was just like, all right, like I'm gonna just keep doing what I'm doing and expand on it. Fast forward, I didn't know what I was doing. Didn't have any job, didn't have any clients, didn't have anywhere to serve the meatballs. And so I just hustled, like kept putting my stuff out, do caterings here and there. Ironically, 3 months after being let go from RGA, one of the committees in RGA had a lunch that they need catered. And so they hired me to cater the lunch at the company who had just let me go 3 months later or 3 months ago. And so I literally walked in, walked in, and I still have my badge from that day. Because I remember, like, I was like, man, I'm saving this. I'm going to frame this shit one day. And I walked in there as a vendor of the same company that fired me. So they paid me. And it was so cool. But in doing that, putting myself out there, I had Bed Bath Beyond had reached out because they saw me at Smorgasburg, and they were like, "Hey, we're opening up this studio kitchen in Brooklyn, and we need somebody to present, like a big black Rachel Ray. We just need that to welcome these people into the store. We also film it, so we film it. It's in a studio kitchen. There's an audience, and you do all of the cooking in our kitchen." So I was like, "All right, best." So I did that. After I'm let go from my job, by coincidence or by serendipity, the head chef of Bed Bath Beyond retires. And so they call me and they hire me as their head chef. Meanwhile, like I'm not a chef. Like I'm not a chef. I'm a hustler that
You are
cooks
now.
really, really well. Now I am, but then I was just, man, like I was like, I need a job. And they paid me every time. And we negotiated a deal where I owned the content. So they filmed me,
Wow.
paid me, and I would show up here every single week and I would cook for all of their guests. And the athlete in me, I would cook things that I never even like tasted before. And I would wait till day of to cook it for the first time. And I would practice once in the morning. And then at night, I would make it again for the people. And I would understand just like my version of it and how I would present it both to this audience and on camera. And I would liken that experience to being like an actor who acts on Broadway, because not only do you have to make sure that the food is good, you also have to entertain these people in real time. You got to prep the food that you're going to serve after your demo, and you got to make sure the food that you make during your demo is edible too, because you're going to have to serve that to them as well once your reserves run out. And I did all the cooking.
You had
So
no chefs like helping you with.
nobody, no, because they didn't know what they was doing. Like Bed Bath Beyond was like, there's only one studio like this in the country, and we trying it out. So here you go, you do what you want with it. And I was like, all right, cool. Like same thing, confidence. Like I just came in, didn't know, nobody knew what they was doing, and we just made it work. Like came up with themes. We came up with like um segments. So like this week we're gonna do this, then I'm back on Saturday and we're gonna do the second part. So like we just created this whole system. Just me, my OG Barry. Barry was the person who hired me, and she was like one of the first ever employees of Bed Bath Beyond. And then Jessica was kind of like her producer who was like the day-to-day person with me. But in terms of chef, I did everything. I chopped everything, I cooked everything, I made sure that it was pretty, and we did it on film. And
Is it just customers that were strolling around could walk in, or did they have to sign up to kind of come to this?
Not at all. It's just customers that walked in. And this Industry City. So Industry City in Brooklyn it's in Sunset Park, but it's it's just a row on the pier in Brooklyn of um huge warehouses that
I
used
went
to be
there
like
this past
factories.
summer. It's the
Yep,
coolest. I brought my kids, and like there's like playgrounds and like random like
yep.
sand boxes for them to play in, and it's just like a never-ending walkthrough. It's such a cool place, and the food there's a lot of good food.
A lot of good food. And we were there. I would say Industry City was still being built out to what it is today, because we were there before they were doing all of those events in like the
Hmm.
alleyways, which is really cool. But we were there just like they had first opened it and were like, look, we just trying to get people to come to the store. And so I was it was the right opportunity and I was prepared for it, just because I was like, boom, I could do this. And yeah, man, I did that for 4 years straight every week, and
So
I practiced being on camera.
yeah, I mean, you know what? I was thinking about that a while, like as we've been researching you and seeing your stuff for a while now. I mean, as an athlete and having played at Syracuse in the NFL, you've been on camera, but not directly being. I mean, you've been interviewed, obviously, but not like being the star of the show, so to speak. And you transitioned great into that. So, kudos on being a baller at that stuff. Let me ask you this: what's on the horizon? What are your plans going forward, dude? With the brand, with you as a media personality, tell us about the takeover.
We're just working, man. I think with me, I just like to try new things within whatever space I'm in. So within food, like what would a cookbook look like? What would an Amazeballs brick and mortar look like? How am I working towards it? So now it's like we're doing pop-ups with in terms of content. We shot a pilot, we're editing that. Um, I still host Wine and Food Fest. So I have Wine and Food Fest in Prince Edward's Island that I'm the host of, 2 day food and concert series, wine and
Oh,
food
hello,
concert.
fancy, yeah.
Um, and so like I'm just all over the place. So I would say just everything within food, I'm trying it, and they all on the stove right now, so they coming out soon.
I love it.
Be on
Some
the
of the
lookout.
How
some of
are
the
you managing all the ideas? Like we do this, and we have full-time jobs, and we want to. I mean, we have a lot of ideas. Like cookbook, you mentioned the cookbook. Like we have an idea for a cookbook. It's just there's so many things, and there's not enough time sometimes in the day. Is it a team of people you built that you trust that you can just like pitch ideas to, and they make them like, hey, remember that pop-up shop? I found a location. What do you think of this? Or is it just you?
Most of the time it's just me, but in certain instances, yeah, I'll bring in contractors, or like my lady helps me with things. My homeboy here, Darren, he helps me with things. So sometimes it's a collaboration, but when it comes to ideas, the best way, at least for me, is if I have an idea that I think is worth something, I try to practice it and make it real as fast as possible. And that could be anything from like writing it out on a physical piece of paper that I could touch. Like that takes the idea from like something that's just going to keep playing around in here to putting it in a physical place that now I can react to. And whatever creative it is, I try to make it real as fast as possible. And that's my practice. And I mean, I talk about this thing all of the time, but why not? I remember when I was in grad school, I had this professor give this lesson on the 70-20-10 method. And he talked about 70% of his investment strategy when he worked in advertising was we're going to put 70% of our resources, time, money, creativity into something that's going to give us 70% in return. And that's the tried and true. Tried and true right now might be a job, right? Like when I worked in advertising, 70% of my time, everything went into that job, and it gave me 70% of return through money, through benefits, through XYZ. 20% new and emerging. That would be if it's investment, it would Tesla, maybe the blockchain, like whatever that new and emerging thing is, AI might be in that mix, right? Like the new and emerging thing, we're going to invest 20% into that thing. And if we don't get any return, that's fine because we got the 70% and we secure in this thing. But we're going to invest in it and we're going to practice investing in that. And then that last 10% is wild and crazy shit. That might be Bitcoin or whatever coin is new out. That might be whatever you think is interesting. You don't expect anything in return from it, but it has the potential to be the biggest opportunity just because you're investing in it. And by doing that and taking that concept and putting it into my life while I worked in advertising, I always practice food in the way of just bringing food to my coworkers. That's a form of practice.
yeah.
Um, that 10% I've always written. Like I love to write. So I always write. I always find time to practice things that are valuable to me and that have the possibility to be valuable. And so whenever it's time and that full-time job might be ready to go, we're gonna pull them throttles. And now whatever my 20% comes to the forefront and I'm able to shift and and do it smoothly just because I've always practiced it, and I've built that practice into my lifestyle and into my system. And I would say, like, for some people that works, and for some people they got to go all in and just be focused on that one thing. But for me, nah, like I try to just do what I like to do, and fit it into those little buckets until it's time to switch them. And then I'm Captain Kirk, and I'm just full throttle, man. Preston
I love it.
nitrous.
I love
Yeah.
that rule too. That's super good advice. And even what you said about the creative ideas, like I like to keep stuff by my bed. It's like I wake up and I have dream. I'm like, I thought of an idea. If you're like up in the middle of the night, and it's like, you're right, you lose it. And then like, I'll go to math the next day and be like, I had this idea, but it's not that cool. It doesn't sound that cool anymore. But if you, in the moment when you're feeling it, with all creativity, if it's editing, if it's something else, if I'm in the groove, I'm going for it, because that's what I'm going to get the best out of it.
You gotta make it real.
So let's make something real right now, bro. We have this this little fun thing we like to do. It's called Sex, Lies, and Videotape. So we're gonna show you something and see how you react to it.
Let's do it.
A crazy superstition? It's kind of crazy because when I walk to class, if I ever walk on a crack with my left foot, I gotta walk on a crack with my right foot, or I feel bad. I don't know why.
Most memorable
It is
game
weird,
played.
right?
So here's a question for you, and this what obviously superstitious, in sports, it's a lot of that. What superstitions have you brought over into your current role, being on camera? Is there something you do every time, or is there something that transitioned from your sports career over into your current career?
Red draws. I wear red draws whenever I have something important to do. Like if when I go on the Today Show, like I'm wearing red draws. Or if I'm riding I'll ride, like the other day I just rode 60 miles on my bike. I was like, all right, like I don't got nothing to do. Like I'm gonna go visit this person. I'm gonna have coffee with this person in Eagle Rock, and I live near the airport, and I'm gonna go over here and drop off some razzle dazzle. And 60 miles, I wear my red draws. And the color red for me just like is significant, because if it's on my body, that means that the dog is present. Like, and I wore red draws when I was in college. The same draws I wore from like high school all the way through college, and they were red. And so I would say, like, I still carry that tradition today. If if my lady see that I take out the red draws, she always asks, like, "Uh-oh, what's going on today?" I'm like, it's that dog. The dog is needed. So that's kind of my bat signal to call him out. Red draws.
I
That's
love
super
it. I love it.
Awesome stuff. So our theme of this episode is throwing a poker. So a lot of our episodes is all about how to throw a party, and we have recipes, and those are important, but it's really about getting people together. And some people only see their family, their friends on holidays, and based on our conversation too, it's like it's the people. The food brings the people together. And so our episodes are like, we want people to watch them and say, oh, I should do this with my friends, or I should get together and have poker night, or go out on a boat and throw this kind of party. So our poker night is, we have a lot of various foods, like finger foods and stuff, and try to make unique options. But, whether you've thrown a poker night or you haven't, what kind of foods what menu would you make for that poker night?
I would definitely have foods that you can eat with one hand, because one, you don't want to get your cards dirty. Two, you probably drink, like have some type of beverage, beer or whiskey, whatever you have, and you want to be able to have clean hands while you do it. So I would say, like, I would have maybe like some sliders, or wingdings, maybe some type of potato salad or macaroni and tuna salad, like something like that, where you pick up a plate, you eat it, you put it down, and then you back to the game. And then at the very end, I would say I would have like a version of either ribs or a steak, like something where once you get through all of the like finger foods and like whatever those things are, at the very end, that's like the adult food, where it's like, damn, we got a bomb ass ribeye, and we just gonna slice that up, and you just come by, maybe some chimichurri on top. People just come by, grab a bite, and go back to what they doing. And then I would just like serve like the real cool meats at the end, or like shrimp skewers, like the expensive stuff. Maybe some ribs that we had smoking overnight. Like we'll do all of that stuff at the very end. But while it's going on in the middle, finger foods. And then at the end, that's when it's like, damn, we all around the table having a conversation with a beer, and we just picking off the ribeye off the table.
For all the people that lost money and their spirits are down, they got some good food coming their way.
That's a fact, man. We're gonna treat you to the good shit.
I love it. So let's hear about like your we're throwing a let's say the three of us can throw a banger like this. We got people playing cards, and you mentioned ribs. I'm a big rib guy. Ribeye is also my favorite cut of meat too. So walk us through how you smoke ribs. Like, what's your recipe? Like, what's your rib game like?
Ribs, I have a seasoning mix called Razzle Dazzle, and so usually I'll start off by just seasoning with salt, maybe just some salt. I don't have a smoker, but I'll usually cook the ribs, salt, put it on the fire directly, get the nice crust, and then I'll move it over to the less crusty or the less fiery side, season it with that Razzle Dazzle or whatever that house mix is, then put it back on the fire to kind of glaze that up. And then same thing, I go from high heat, put it back to the low heat. I'll add my barbecue sauce, let that cook on the low heat for a little bit, put it right back on the extremely high fire, both sides, and then I'll let it smoke all the way through. And then sometimes, like, it depends on the mood. You might take those ribs, wrap them in some foil, pop them in the oven, or you might do the reverse where you start them off in the oven and then put them on the grill. But it will be some variation of that where it's like searing, smoking, searing, smoking, searing, smoking, and then saucing and cooking all the way through on a lower version of heat. So it's just high and low. That's how I would say I cook my ribs.
There's something about rubbing that sauce on too that makes it's like just like, oh, I gotta go sauce the ribs, like just keep it going. It makes it just I know I'm it's making me hungry right now.
That's a fun part. I agree, Alex. Like, you're hanging out too. You got some people over there. So people are talking over here. Maybe these girls are talking and this guy's talking over here, but you go over and you're saucing the ribs. Someone's going to stand next to you drinking a beer. And now you've got this moment over the smoker, over the grill. That's where it's at, man.
Gives people an escape from the conversation. They're going to go stand near the smoker. What, in all of our episodes, we provide a playlist because music's important. What music what would be the key songs on this playlist if you're bumping music in the background of the poker night?
Oh, I would say at the poker night I'll probably have on just like something jazzy, maybe some Miles Davis or something old school, like some funk. I mean, like I would have that type of stuff on for the poker night. Once we get to the food section, Gotta Give It Up by Marvin Gaye. I'm gonna have that right next to the grill while I'm grilling, and this you gonna right next to me, and that's gonna be my vibe at the grill.
Awesome. Let's so to kind of wrap things up with you, we're gonna fire you some this or that questions. These are we just want your answer and why.
Okay.
Quick and simple. So I'll start you off. At SU, frat or sorority party?
Sorority party. At that age, you just want to be around girls.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's a good answer there. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm gonna throw.
The girls come to the sorority. The girls come to the frat parties, though. Sometimes from my experience, the sorority parties were like sometimes lamer, but the girls flock to the frat. So
you always bring it to where they at. That's my motto.
Well, Alex has two little daughters, Derell. So Alex, you want your daughters? They're going to be spending a lot of time.
No. This isn't about them. This is just there's different rules for them. No parties at all.
So I got a controversial question for you that someone asked me, and they were offended by my answer. When you're making grilled cheese, are you putting mayo on the outside or butter on the outside?
Mayonnaise.
Same.
Yeah. I do mayonnaise to start it off, and then at the end I might put like a little knob of butter just so I get the edges with that buttery golden butter, but nah, mayonnaise.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, would you rather play NBA Jam or NFL Blitz?
NBA Jam. I grew up on that, and I don't even like basketball that much, but it's something about it where like homeboy with the fire, like doing dunks, like 50 feet jumping in the air. Something about it that's cool.
NBA Jam was one of the best games.
Absolutely.
NFL Blitz, though, I used to play at this place called Kahunaville at the mall here.
Oh,
just like
yeah, I know
all you do
Kahunaville.
is throw the pass down the field every time, and just
Every time they catch it, yeah, and they look like the Incredible Hulk. Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, this you're gonna settle a tie between Alex and I that we haven't come to blows over yet, but we might. Are you more into corn or flour tortillas on your tacos?
Flour. I actually like flour tortillas. However, me and my lady been to Mexico a few times. Over there, I'll go corn. But here I'm flour unless I know the place got some good corn, then I'll go corn. But if I'm gonna eat corn, it gotta be the good stuff. And I'm Mexico, I'll get the corn, but here I'm flour.
That's a great answer. I agree. So I've had really good corn tortillas, tacos.
Mm-hmm.
But most of them are rubbery, and then they try to give you two of them because it's rubbery. So they're like, let me give you a second so you can hold the thing. Flour, just, if they're crisped up nice, they're great, but they're
Can't
rubbery.
go wrong.
Yeah, otherwise they're just rubbery. But Matt likes them all the time, so that's cool.
I agree with that. The rubberiness.
Okay, so would you rather, at your stage in life right now, Pro Bowl, NFL season, or win an Emmy?
In terms of if I'm the person doing it,
what would you rather receive? Pro Bowl nomination?
Emmy. I would get an Emmy because that's an award. That would be like an Emmy would be like an MVP trophy versus a Pro Bowl nomination. So I would take the trophy for sure.
Awesome.
Okay. I've got one more question, and then we're gonna wrap this thing up because you're too much fun. All right, you got to have a co-host for a show, and it's make or break for all the marbles. Is Bobby Flay your co-host or Guy Fieri?
I'm gonna say Guy Fieri because the competitor in me would just want to beat Bobby Flay, and that's his whole brand, like beating him. So I would rather compete against Bobby Flay and then be in cahoots with Guy Fieri because Guy Fieri, everybody loves him, whereas you got it's two sides of Bobby Flay. Like you got people who love him and then people who like I want him to lose every time. So I would want to be in that group of people who try to beat him and then be homeboys with Guy Fieri because he know all the good food all around the world.
Let me ask you this: have you ever done or want to do one of those competition shows? There's so many of them now, like Tournament of Champions or.
I actually competed in cooking shows. One of the first things I did was actually compete in cooking shows. So like Taste Made, the first ever show I did was a show called I forgot the name of it, but it was me and a friend of mine now who went around LA, tried different foods, and then we went back to the studio and made them. So that was like an 8-episode show. Then I was on this channel called I forget the name of the channel, but we did like you had to wear a blindfold and they shot food at you, you had to taste it and remake it. So like I did a couple of them. Now I've judged a few competition shows. So I did one on Netflix with a guy named Anthony Porofsky, and we did that show for Easy Bake Battle. And then I have another show coming out sometime this year, I don't know when, with like a Food Network OG, and I was a guest on that show, and that's coming out on I believe Roku or one of those channels sometime this year. I just don't know when. We shot that last year.
That's awesome, dude. And, I'm assuming you won that because you can't be beat because this has been an awesome time. So what do you want to share with our people out here about you, man? Where can they find you? What do you want to tell the world as we wrap this party up?
Just check us out. Most of the stuff I'm doing right now is with Amazeballs. Amazeballs on Instagram is where you can see the events or things that we're doing. My personal page on Instagram is Relly Crocker. The stories you want to watch the stories on that just because I'll be doing the cool stuff in the stories, and I'll post every once in a while, but check those things out. And then just be on the lookout through those channels when I do some cool stuff, and come by, say hello.
Dude, y'all, this dog is great. The great Chef Derrell Smith. Thank you so much for your time, bro. And listeners, we'll see you next week.
No
Thanks,
doubt,
man.
I appreciate y'all. Absolutely.